The final off-season episode of the OK Baseball podcast. Don't worry, everyone. This isn't our last episode. We have plenty more here as we're just getting started here at OBP. But guess what? We are now less than a week away from pitchers and catchers reporting. We're going to get a couple more coming earlier. The people who are going to go to the World Baseball Classic. That's exciting. The month of March is going to be a very fun month of baseball, but so is just next week as well. We have plenty to talk about in this episode today. We're going to give you our brand new segment called Coast to Coast, and then we're going to end this episode off with something that Sean and I had some trouble coming to an agreement on, but we got a consensus, and we are going to give our first annual OBP top 10 positional players. So we hope you enjoy that. Obviously, if you have some discussion or debate, we would love for you to chime in here. So we are live right now, coming to you Thursday night. Normally we are Wednesday night. We'll be going back to you Wednesday nights, 6 o'clock Eastern time every week during the season. It's going to be a fantastic time. Sean, how you doing, man? I know I'm long-winded today. It's been a crazy day for me over here. As if you haven't noticed, or if you haven't heard, I am in the process of moving. So my studio is not where I want it to be, but hey, I'm here. That's all that matters.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you are. It's going to be an awesome show, man. Like, we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm sure the top 10 hitters are going to leave some room for debate. How about that? It's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. I was really tempted on putting it at the beginning of the show, but you know what? I feel like that'll be a nice little end cap and leave us wanting more. And that's exactly where I'm at right now, as we are so close. With that being said, as I'm clicking the intro on accident, so let's go ahead and get into our first ever Coast to Coast. What that means in Coast to Coast, and Sean made a beautiful video for that, and as you know, I'm not prepared, so we'll get that video out for you next week. But what Coast to Coast is we are going to go through on every week of our show. We are going to touch base on every single division, going coast to coast, East, Central, the West, and we're going to at least talk about the top storyline in every division. So, Sean, without further ado, let's get started. Let's start on the East Coast. We're going to start in the American League East, and the topic of the week this week in the AL East is the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees, and the topic is Aaron Hicks. Does he get a shot at left field? Does he get a shot at this Yankees 40-man or opening day roster? The left field position for the Yankees has been what we've been talking about all offseason long. They have yet to make any sort of addition for that. I know they're keep doing that. I got to stop that. I believe that Jurickson Profar would be a fantastic addition to the New York Yankees. However, he's still not signed. The Yankees have not gone with it. Brian Cashman has gone on the air in the offseason stating that left field is still in need, but Aaron Hicks is still looks like going to be that starting guy as of now. What's your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating, really, because the Yankees are going to go with Aaron Hicks starting in left field, but it's not for lack of trying. You know, they've been out shopping him all winter, trying to find somebody to take him, and to no avail. And so, yeah, they're going to start the year with him, and why not? I mean, he's got 3 years remaining on his deal that he signed not too long ago. So I think, like, they don't really have a choice, which, you know, if he's back and healthy and right as rain, then, you know, it's a great thing for them. But there's a lot of doubt right now as to whether or not that's going to be the case, right?
Yeah, you put in health and you talk about his performance. Obviously, his performance wasn't great last season, and there was basically moments where you just knew he was going to be a bench player all season long, and it seemed like that was kind of the sign saying, hey, look, Aaron, we're going to go and reach out in the offseason and find your replacement. That seemed like that was the sign towards the end of the year. However, we are still not there. They went out and got a little bit of pitching help. They obviously re-signed Aaron Judge, but the glaring issue for the New York Yankees is still left field, that corner outfield spot. Aaron Hicks still looks like that guy. However, there are a few other players on their roster that could fill that spot. The fact that they haven't added anybody so far this offseason, do you think that means that they are hopeful for guys like Cabrera? Do you think that is a possibility?
I think first and foremost, they're hopeful for Aaron Hicks. You know, there was I guess, some signs of positivity in his season last year. His OBP, his on base percentage, at 330. That's good. That's a good on base percentage. He didn't strike out at an obscene rate. It was about 24%, but it's still not. When you're running Giancarlo Stanton out there, anybody who strikes out less than that is in good shape. But the power wasn't there for him. Only 8 home runs. Excuse me, to go along with an ISO of under 100, right? And I think that's the big thing for Aaron Hicks. It's the one thing that he's gonna have to sort out. Now, I was reading that that he tried a little bit of his to get himself back and healthy. He cut down, trimmed down, slimmed down a little bit, and then, according to him, that sapped some of his power. So he's kind of like maybe scrapping that idea and going back, trying to come in stronger than he was. If it works, great. The Yankees are that much better. But as of right now, it's a massive question mark out there. And so maybe guys like, excuse me, like Estevan Florial and Oswaldo Cabrera may be the guys to, if Hicks gets off to a slow start, he may not be long for that position.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Obviously, It seems like a DFA is in the future for at least one of those 3 names that you mentioned before spring training is over. I don't see all 3 of them finishing on the 40-man by the time we hit opening day. Maybe a trade is involved. But right now, I know that there was talks that Florio was in the trade talks in this offseason and at the trade deadline last year, and it seemed like nobody wanted him. So if nobody wants him now, they're probably going to have to be a DFA candidate. The Yankees looked like they were ready to move on for him last season. But again, I thought the same thing about Aaron Hicks. I thought that was going to be, right. I thought the message was written and plain as clear as on the wall there. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Aaron Hicks as we get to spring training. It's only just 10 days away from actual games. So Aaron Hicks will be someone that I pay attention to on the New York Yankees squad. All right, let's keep this going coast to coast here. We're going to just drive a little bit down or maybe take a flight because we're going pretty fast here. We're going to go to the NL East and we're heading to Atlanta. They got a new play-by-play announcer in this one as they lose Chip Carey. However, let's talk about Ronald Acuna Jr. Acuna bounces back. Obviously had a tough season last year with injuries and just a whole bunch of things went wrong, especially at the end for the Atlanta Braves. This Atlanta Braves team is a very fun team to watch. They have all their young stars locked up. It's just, Alex Antropoulos, and I know I probably shouldn't say those words around your Blue Jays hoodie. However, he's doing some fantastic things for Atlanta. Today's question and today's topic for the Atlanta Braves in our Coast to Coast segment, Ronald Acuna Jr., will he bounce back? Will he be healthy enough to be not only a all-star caliber player, but I'm going to add more to it. Can he be an MVP type player this season?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to watch because he played the full season last year, 533 plate appearances, but he just wasn't his particularly precocious self at the plate. Even though he put up a weighted runs created plus of 114, and still good, decent-ish offensive numbers, just not what we're used to seeing. So that'll be, I think, the big thing. Apparently he's healthy. His conversations with the medical staff in Atlanta, they decided he's not playing in the WBC, which probably is a good thing, just kind of get him right as rain for when the season starts so that he can just have that typical monster season that we're used to seeing. It's interesting to me, though, after tearing your ACL, that you still go and steal 29 bases. That, to me, the part I would have thought would have been kind of slower to come around, but it was everything else. That being said, the projections look really good. I mean, we're still talking about one of the best players in all of baseball, and at a ripe old age of 25, this guy is entering his prime, having done already the things that he's done. This could be a very fun season in Atlanta.
I want to correct you on one thing here, and only because it just came out just earlier today, so you might have missed it. But there are reports coming out that Acuna is actually going to play in the World Baseball Classic. He got the nod to play for Venezuela. The Braves front office let them go. So that's interesting. So not only are we going to see him in spring training, we're going to see him in the World Baseball Classic. That's fast-paced baseball right away. So I think obviously health is an issue, and I think you could have a whole topic. We could have a whole episode on how the World Baseball Classic has messed up injuries in the past. I really go back to not 2017, but the baseball classic before that. The New York Yankees squad really messed up, really had some injuries. Texera, a couple of their pitchers as well, a lot of injuries on that squad. But you obviously have to have some concern for a guy like Ronald Acuna, who has had injuries in the past, that has missed a significant amount of time playing in a World Baseball Classic right before the season starts.
Yeah, and that's why I was, like, what a great move. All the people involved, cooler heads prevailed, and you know what? I was happy that he was skipping out on the WBC. Now I'm really nervous. Obviously they don't make that decision lightly. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. So, obviously people getting paid more than I do are able to make that decision. But as an outsider, if it were me, I would be asking him to take a pass, which is a tough ask, right? Like, how do you ask a player to not play for their home country when he looks healthy? Like, that's the big thing, right? So is it a just in case? For me, sure it is. For them, I guess they're okay with rolling the dice.
I really hope that everything goes good for Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah.
this year, because when he's on, it's great for baseball. He's one of the most explosive players and one of the most entertaining players in all of baseball. And I just picture it now. Ronald be the guy that makes the Adam Jones type of catch in the World Baseball Classic this year. Like, I could see him making one of those crazy catches. If you remember from 2017, Adam Jones, I think it was robbing off of Manny Machado too. I won't take any Manny Machado slander on this podcast, Sean. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that now. All right, let's head to the Central here. We're going to go in the Midwest. Let's go to the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs have been, in my mind, one of the most interesting teams this offseason. They have done so many interesting things. They go and sign Dansby Swanson. They signed Trey Mancini. There's a lot of different additions that they have signed to this squad. However, there's still a glaring need in my mind, and that's who's going to play third base. It seems like maybe Nick Madrigal could be a possibility, but he also seems like he could also be the odd man out as well. Could be a trade candidate. We've heard that the other side of town, the White Sox, are interested in having a reunion with Madrigal. That could be an interesting conversation. However, with Dansby Swanson sitting at shortstop, who is going to play next to him at that hot corner? What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation in Chicago, because really they do have the guys to play third base, but neither one of them is like the perfect solution. And of course, I'm talking about everybody knows Patrick Wisdom, and of course his counterpart, Christopher Morel, 23 years old. That's going to be a tough ask to step in at such a young age to be the everyday third baseman. What's interesting to me, though, when you look at these two options, you're looking at two guys who are very similar at the plate, in that there's power there, lots of strikeouts, but the difference being, excuse me, is that Patrick Wisdom is a little bit less versatile, right? So Christopher Morel can play just about anywhere on the diamond. So that's, to me, like, maybe gives Patrick Wisdom like the edge. But the one thing that I think gives Christopher Morel the edge is his arm strength, which is like 99th percentile stuff here, right? Like, that's almost too tempting not to put him on third base. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, for me, what this comes down to is, if the Cubs are in it, I think July is when they find their real third baseman, a more solid solution than what they have right now. They can run the guys out there, and both of them projected to hit 20 home runs, strike out at around 30%. And that's good enough. But if you're going to make a serious run and you're that close, I think you need a third baseman.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can totally see that third baseman being a revolving door at the first half of the season for the Cubs, and especially with the players they have. No one really glares as yes, you have to start this guy over another when it comes to Madrigal over Wisdom or so on or so forth. I do think that is going to really help their bench if they decide to add them, because multiple players of those can be utility players, not just play third base. So I do think that could help their bench. I think the Cubs are going to be one of those really interesting teams this year. I think we're going to see them really shock the NL Central and become one of those teams that is right up there with St. Louis and Milwaukee right away. And then maybe we'll see some buys, or maybe it Texas Rangers style kind of season like we saw last year, where there's a lot of issues. I know there's some glaring needs at pitching still. We haven't even talked about pitching. We're still talking about the third base spot.
Yeah.
And they coast in, and maybe they find a way to sell some of those utility guys for a couple of young guys and keep building their farm system and so forth. I think it's a complete one or the other. I'm not sure. I think there's an opportunity we could see this team just easily 500 as well. I have so many questions about this Cubs team, but I do know they're going to be really exciting. It's not just going to be a 2-team race in the NL Central this year. I think the Cubs are going to give a run for their money, and who knows about the Pirates and Reds too? I mean, I think the Reds are going to be pretty bad, but who knows about those teams? They could steal a couple and really make it change. I'm not saying they're going to compete for the very top, but they could be they could be a Cinderella story maybe later on in the year. I do like this conversation though. This will be a conversation that we pay attention to at the beginning of the spring training. We are going to have to definitely come back and talk about this when they do maybe make a decision, or if the position battle continues on, who's going to play third base for the Chicago Cubs. Let's stay in the Central. Let's go to the American League side, and let's talk about those Cleveland Guardians. One of the most entertaining stories last season, the young squad, the rise of Stephen Kwan. I mean, it's just what fun team this is. Their pitching rotation is very fun. Shane Bieber is amazing. Tristan McKenzie's so fun. But what's really fun is the energy we get from guys like Josh Naylor. I mean, obviously, you think about I immediately go to the home run against the Yankees in the playoffs. What was it, the baby thing? That was outstanding, right? Obviously, he got some slack for it. They did, but regardless, hilarious. Now we're going to see Bo Naylor. So we're going to have Josh Naylor and Bo Naylor, the Naylor Bros in the land. What's your thoughts about this? Is it going to be just as entertaining? Do you think Bo is going to be better than Josh at the end of this? What's your thoughts about having both of them in Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got to give them a special shout out to Canadian guys making it in the big leagues, and that's always something great to see for myself personally. But what's really fascinating is, you kind of learned in watching, I think people in Cleveland already knew this, but the rest of the world kind of learned that Josh Naylor is an important part of this of this Guardians I almost said their old name, this Guardians squad. And the fact that he now has his brother in there, I think that kind of allows for even more of that to kind of take place. Like, Josh Naylor was kind of the spirit of the team, you heard, and I think that was only going to improve with his brother now stepping into the catcher position. What's really interesting is that they are kind of almost, I don't want to say complete opposites, because that's not really accurate. But what I mean though is that Josh is the power guy, may need to more reps at DH than first base. But Bo, the catcher's got good defense and a solid bat in the minors. We just haven't really seen him kind of bust out yet at the big league level. It's a fascinating story to watch when two brothers, first of all, are in the big leagues, the Gurriel brothers and so on. There's a long list of them, but now they're on the same team. And I think that just adds an element that you don't get to see too often in baseball.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. The Guardians were already one of the most entertaining teams last year, not just in the AL Central, but in all of baseball. They have some of the most fun fans to follow and talk to on social media as well. I can only imagine with the addition of another Naylor in Cleveland is going to add to that. So looking forward to that. These are really fun storylines. We built these all up, and I didn't think about how these were going to be just make me more anticipate spring training even more. So now we get to see both these Naylor brothers go in Cleveland, down in Florida.
Well, I'm going to give you something else to be excited about, because Josh and Bo actually have a brother named Miles who is younger, and apparently, I believe is a shortstop, has the potential to be better than the other two, even better. And so, if you're looking for a storyline to watch, there's Miles Naylor down there in the Canadian baseball program, looking to make the step up one day too.
Awesome. Yes, let's keep that going. This is a Miles Naylor podcast now. All right, Miles Naylor, friend of the pod already. All right, let's go west. Look at us doing good, coast to coast. This was the fastest plane ride ever. I don't know. Did you get your peanuts? Because I did. Let's talk about the Houston Astros. I think that's a good place to start with the AL West. There's so much to talk about with this division. However, let's talk about the World Series champion. I think we didn't give them justice when we did our division preview. I think a lot of Astro fans let us know that as well on here. We were a little not as in depth as we should have, as you will. We were kind of touching the surface with all teams, but it seems like they wanted a little bit more, and that's fine. We'll give that to you. The question I want to ask you here, and it does seem like this could be the case with the amount of pitching they have, with their young stud infield, with Pena, obviously Altuve, Bregman. They're coming up on some contract years very shortly, but they're aging out, but still the case. Kyle Tucker's outstanding. There's just some really good players on this squad. Now you add GM Dana Brown to the mix, who has done some fantastic things in Atlanta. You got to hope that they're going to also try to do in Houston, sign their young guys like Tucker and Pena to good contracts. Maybe some of those really big pitchers, nice pitchers as well. My thought here, though, all that together, are the Houston Astros a perfect team? Like, is that even possible? Is Houston a perfect team, Sean?
I think if you're, man, I hate to say it, but if anybody is, it's the Houston Astros. And if you do yourself a favor, if you want to be blown away here, go to Fangraphs and their team depth charts and take a look at the Astros all the way around the field. Left field, Alvarez, McCormick in center, Tucker in right, Bregman, Pena, Altuve, Jose Abreu, and then, of course, Martin Maldonado. And then their DH, Michael Brantley. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, there's just no end. And so when you hear, I forget who it was saying it, because it was one of those things just before we went on, but somebody was saying, like, the Yankees feel like, oh, Houston can't beat us if we get on a roll. And I'm like, that must be some kind of roll, extra butter and everything, because there's no way that is true. The Houston Astros are the team to beat in the American League. And I'm saying that as a Blue Jays fan who is looking forward to some real serious noise from my own team. The Astros are the class of the American League, maybe even the entire major leagues. And it kind of like rubs me the wrong way to say that, given, the history that the recent history that they've had and all of that stuff. And they've paid their dues for those, so like, I'm not trying to dig up old memories here, but considering how much they've gone through over the last, and the penalties that they've taken a hit, Keith Law had hit their system that ranked as 26th in all of baseball. And I mean, so, they have their issues, sure. But I mean, here we are, February, whatever date it is, the beginning of February. Right now, they are the class of baseball.
I mean, if you're going to ALCS or World Series year after year after year, I mean, it's consecutive for the last, I want to say it's 5 or 6 years. I don't have it in front of me. I can't remember. But we have seen the Astros in the ALCS at a minimum. If you're doing that year after year, as much as I love prospects and love watching them come up, farm system obviously doesn't matter. Being 27th doesn't seem like to be a big deal. Now, that will improve with Dana Brown. I will say that 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that will improve. What we've seen in his track record, he will make that more of a priority. It might not be right away, because the time he was hired, he's only been able to hire one person so far in his regime. He's going to probably have to wait till next October for that to happen. But we're going to see some big changes with Houston. But I don't think that's going to take them and make them any less competitive. I will be interested to see what happens at the end of 2024 when Bregman and Altuve are free agents. And when are they going to take the route of young core and do the full Atlanta run and kind of do what the Braves have done and let Bregman and Altuve kind of walk, at least one of them? Very interesting, especially when you think of the star-studded Hall of Fame caliber second basemen that the Houston Astros have had for years. Do you do that to Jose Altuve, or do you let him stay a Houston Astro for life? Does the new GM feel like that is a thing that needs to happen at priority, or is that over his head? Is that not one of his calls? That could be something go straight to the owner. I could see that. All of these conversations, I feel we're building that groundwork, but you got to think that that's going to be something that's going to come up very soon.
Yeah. No, exactly right. Like you think at some point what goes up must come down, right? There's got to be an end to it, and right now it might be a couple of years, as you said, when those guys hit free agency, but that's something that Houston has been able to weather thus far with George Springer leaving and Carlos Correa leaving, and they have not missed a beat. But you have to have the pieces to be able to replace those, right? And that's kind of where it'll be interesting to see how over the next couple of years whether Houston can get and develop those replacements. Because if not, there's only one other way to do it, and you got to spend, right? And so it'd be very fascinating for me to watch, just because I love that part of the game, like the roster manipulation and all that stuff. I'll play MLB The Show and I'll simulate all the games just to get back to the off season again, right? So it'll be
100%.
fascinating to me to see how they make that next transition when Bregman and Altuve and others like them are set to depart, maybe.
George Springer leaves in free agency a few years ago. The biggest question was who's going to play center field, who's going to lead off. Kyle Tucker took that and ran. You can make the argument that Kyle Tucker is doing a better job than George Springer is for the Houston Astros. Carlos Correa leaves last season. Everybody was like, oh man, we have this young guy. Is he going to be enough? His name's Jeremy Pena. Never heard of him. What's he do? He comes out to just be an absolute stud, especially in the postseason. Yeah. Now we're going to see a full season of him and possibly see him locked up for a long time. I'm sure through arbitration and through a few of his years in free agency, if it goes the Dana Brown way. You have to put this in your mind that if they just did that with George Springer and Carlos Correa, they're on a pretty good positive track record. You have to think that for at least one of them, they're ready to make that decision on either Jose Altuve at second or Alex Bregman at third base.
Yeah, Altuve is a lifetime Astro. That's not going to change. I don't know what I would do. I can't imagine a scenario where they just let him walk, or even worse, like trade him.
Yeah.
Because then you've got his replacement at some point. One of the faces will always remind you that you just got rid of Jose Altuve, right? So I would be shocked if he's not a lifetime Astro. Alex Bregman's a different story. I mean, he doesn't quite mean as much to the Astros as an Altuve does, but I mean, he's also very difficult to replace. Right. But if I had to pick here and now, Altuve, lifetime Astro.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that is, I think it's a safe bet too. I think if we had the pick going down the line, I think that would be the case. Speaking of MLB The Show, you like to play these games and you like to, add players in. If you had to create your own player, I know you'd be a Blue Jay, but what position would you play?
Interesting. A shortstop. I think, when I have created players always, and I put them like the worst kind of character, like the Aaron Judge body, combined with the stocky personal element, and then of course playing shortstop.
Let's fire shots across the bow. Would your defense be better than Bo Bichette's, or?
No. Mine personally, no. My character, absolutely, because there's, it's not that difficult.
All right, let's end our coast to coast here in the NL West. This is a new topic adding in today. Yu Darvish getting a contract extension. It's going to be a contract extension for 6 years. He is under contract until he is 42 years old. Yu Darvish is going to pitch until he's 54, right? I mean, has he slowed down? Is the Padres going to get enough value out of this contract of Yu Darvish? Are we going to see him pitch in the major leagues until 42? I mean, that's kind of hard to think about, but regardless, 6 years for Yu Darvish on the San Diego Padres. This is a team that we've talked about who, although it might need a little bit of extra pitching, could be easily the best offense in all of baseball and could easily be the favorite to win the NL West. But what's your thoughts about this Darvish extension?
At first, I was like, wow, that's amazing, because, good for all of the older guys, right? Like, look at Yu Darvish at 800 already getting another extension. But then I went and actually looked into it. And I mean, right now, yes, he will be pitching when he's 42, but look around baseball and, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, and they're doing just fine. Thank you very much. Yu Darvish is not quite I don't want to say this and be insulting, but he's not quite on their level as far as how he's been performing. But what I will say, when you do a quick little look back at his kind of career to date, we're talking about innings pitched approaching 200 multiple times. There's a lot of mileage on that arm. And so for me, the fact that he's really hasn't had that much of a history in injury, I think it's one of those safe bets. But the real takeaway here is that that's just the cost of pitching. Like whether you're 35 or 25, like pitching is expensive. Like Chris Bassett's going to be making more money than you, Darvish. Like that's kind of where we are, right? The cost of pitching is just through the roof. So, I mean, having him though in the lineup, in the rotation, kind of adds stability, and I think that's the big thing that you're looking for when you're trying to make a run, and you've been doing what the Padres have been doing for the last few years. You kind of want some kind of guarantee for the future, and I think that's what Yu Darvish provides. And I guess dependable and stable are the two words that that's what they're paying for. And it'll be interesting to see though what that deal looks like, I guess 3 or 4 years from now, because when you go to his StatCast page, all of the numbers that you want to see are he's looking great, with things like his walk rate is in the 91st percentile, and fastball, the spin rate is in the 98th percentile, which is great, but then he's starting to get hit hard. So like his barrel rate, 24th percentile, fastball velocity is taking a dip. He's in the 15th percentile. Average exit velocity, he's in the 49th percentile. So he's starting to get hit more than we've seen. So that'll be interesting to follow over the next few years.
When we look at this contract 6 years from now, what will it take for us to be like, this was a good contract for San Diego? Will it be Yu Darvish just being an ace for all 6 years for this team? Will it be San Diego winning a World Series? Will it be him having to win a Cy Young? Or will it just be him being a rotation piece for the entire part of the contract, staying as healthy as he possibly can? What do we look for to see that this is going to be a win for a contract for the Padres?
Yeah, I think you're just what I've said. Was he healthy? And did he eat innings? Because you cannot pin any kind of World Series aspirations, especially on a team like the Padres, as loaded as they are. Mm-hmm. You can't pin that on a 35-year-old starting pitcher, right? So is it going to be successful? It'll be successful if he's healthy and he gets, he's a 500 pitcher, putting up a couple wins a season. Like that's really what you can expect, right? We're talking about an annual value of $18 million. That's the cost of pitching. So I don't have huge expectations for this contract. It's not like a 1 year, $43 million contract that we're talking about, because then I have some huge expectations.
Yeah, good call. I mean, yeah, AAV is only 18. Put that in perspective. Verlander and Scherzer, they're making 42 AAV, right? So, and those are on the same exact squad, right? They're both on the Mets.
Yeah.
Bridge, we can build that bridge and name it after Steve Cohen. All right, that was fun. We're going to give you more of that coast to coast every week here. We're going to give you different teams in the division, but we will cover at least one topic in every division every week. We want to get every division all the love they deserve. I feel like people don't talk enough about the Central Division, so I want to make sure we get those covered. Everybody likes talking about the East and the West, but they don't talk enough about those Central teams, and there's so many good storylines in there. All right, let's get to what we really had a hard time all week long. This is why we had to delay one extra day, because we just couldn't come down to a conversation on here. We have decided, we after bickering back and forth and all that good stuff, we have the consensus, the OK Baseball Podcast Year 1 top 10 positional players, 1 through 10. This is pretty fun. I think. Now, do we start at the 1 or do we start at 10? I think starting at 1 might be
no. Let's start from the bottom.
Okay.
Like Drake.
Ooh. Okay. Start from the bottom. Okay. All right. I see you, Toronto, over there from the 6, but we're going to start from the 10. We're going to start from the 10, though. All right. Number 10. This should be pretty fun. Where's my Cleveland Guardian fans at? Number 10, Jose Ramirez. This was, to me, I think, a pretty easy situation putting him in the top 10. I think that he had a fantastic season last year. I think he's only going to get better. if you look at his stats, you could make the argument that he could belong a higher than 10. But it was a little tough to do this, so I'm going to put him at 10. Well, we both did. This is a consensus pick. What's your thoughts on Jose Ramirez for the Cleveland Guardians?
Yeah, man, one of my favorite players in all of baseball. I mean, there's just nothing this guy can't do, and that's like, and I know like I'm gushing, and we're starting at number 10, and so
This is great.
imagine what I'm going to be like at number 1. But yeah, no, just the power, the ability to steal bases, the defense. I know we're only talking about hitting really, but his ability to get on base and to never strike out and still hit the ball hard, all of it, like he might be one of the more complete players in all of baseball, and doing it in a frame that I can relate to.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, me too. Exactly, right? He's got the dad bod look, and he's willing to get to the top 10 in positional players. I'll take that all day. All right, number 9. We're going with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Only one Dodger makes this list, by the way, and they're at number 9. So go ahead and debate a wall, Dodgers fans, if you don't like this. But number 9 goes to Mookie Betts. What's your thoughts on Mookie Betts? Obviously, we see him traded over from Boston a few years back. He's had some great seasons in LA. He's still deserving to be in this top 10. Sits at number 9, Sean.
Yeah, man. Like, this guy is quietly one of the best players in all of baseball, and I was so happy that he got out of the AL East, but kind of not really happy about it, because then you don't get to see him as often, right? He's one of those guys who you hate him because he's so good, and now that he's not playing against a division rival, I can just sit back and relax, and you kind of wonder if he was kind of slowing down a little bit over 2021, only 23 home runs, only 3.8 wins above replacement. And that's what we're talking about here. Only 3.8 for a guy who's had a 10.5 win season already. Since 2014, he's collected 50 wins above replacement. This could be one of the best players of all time when all is said and done. And so Mookie Betts looking like every bit the guy I hated in the AL East.
How weird is it going to be this season when we see a side-by-side of Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts, but they're wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers and San Diego Padres uniform? Boston Red Sox fans, you might not want to watch that series because they're going to talk about that. That's going to be a storyline they talk about the entire first through third inning, especially if you got Boog on the call. So, interesting on that one. But, I mean, Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, hey.
That picture will be on my Christmas cards this coming season.
Good idea. Let's make that happen. All right, number 8. I feel like I lost this one with the consensus pick. However, I mean, it was hard to put him any higher or lower, but I feel like I lost this one. I wanted him a little higher. You had him a little lower. He found himself at number 8, and that's Manny Machado. I thought that he had a MVP caliber season last year. He could have. I think he could have won it over Paul Goldschmidt. I think he has some of the best defense in all of baseball. I think he's the second best defender at third base in all of baseball. He's got some great hitting tools. I think he's coming up on a contract year. I think he's going to be absolutely amazing for the San Diego Padres this year. That's why Manny Machado's in our top 10. He sits at number 8, Sean.
Yeah, and I mean, I got to say, like, you're lucky I put his name down at all. We've talked about this many times, but this is Manny Machado and I are like oil and water, man. I can't. But what I will say is the guy is 30, and I would have put money down that he was much older, and because we've been hearing his name forever, but forever ago was when he was 19, right? So 30 years old, still about to hit free agency at a ripe age, at a perfect age. He's going to get paid again. And last year putting up, 7.4 wins above replacement might be just his most perfect season that he's had in his entire career. And that's kind of impossible for me to wrap my head around that. A, it's Manny Machado. B, he's only 30. And C, he just had the best season of his career.
You put a full season of Juan Soto, a returning season of Tatis Jr., and a season of Xander Bogaerts around him hitting. Who do you not pitch to? You got to pitch to all of them, right? So there's a chance there's a really big chance in my mind that Manny Machado has a better season than he did last year. What's your thoughts?
I mean, it's tough to imagine, but certainly you can see him driving in more runs. And like you said, I don't know that you can pitch around him. So, I don't know that that's going to dramatically increase things like his walk rate or, his on base percentage. But man, I mean, you got to be careful. That's the big thing, right? And maybe that's when people start making mistakes, is because they're trying to be too careful. And you got to, like, all the way down the lineup, you got to be so careful. So maybe Manny Machado gets in a couple extra mistake pitches.
Yeah, could you imagine? Yeah, I think Manny Machado is one of the funnest players in baseball. I followed him, and I loved him in Baltimore. I know you're not a fan of him. I think
Yeah.
it comes back to his Baltimore days, but what
Mhm.
he's doing over in San Diego has been really exciting. I think he's taking a whole new leadership role, and I'd love to see what happens this year, as you can, in my mind, put them as a World Series favorite. We'll get all those predictions on a later episode, but just going to throw that out there now. All right, at number 7, it's going to go to the guy who beat Manny Machado in that AL MVP race. That's Paul Goldschmidt. He sits at number 7 on this list. What a season he had last year. You got to think he's going to regress a little bit. However, his defense, his play is outstanding. His bat is fantastic. I mean, this St. Louis infield is covered with gold gloves. And yes, the pitching might be a little bit of worrisome. However, with the offensive production that St. Louis has, and you put Goldschmidt there, even though he's getting a little bit older, I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. I feel he could have just another great season. I'm not going to put him in my top 3 or 4 to win the NL MVP again this year. I'm not going to do that. I do think he's going to regress just a little bit. However, I do think he's going to be good enough to still be a top 10 player in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's exactly what you just said. I think you're 100% correct. He's 35 years old, which I found surprising. Almost as surprising as the fact that Manny Machado is still only 30. So I also expect to see some kind of regression. Will it be dramatic? I don't think so. Looking at his projections, he's still projected to hit around 30 home runs. His on base percentage probably won't be around 400 again, but still quite high. Weighted runs created plus, he's projected at 140, which sounds really low considering he put up 177 last year. There's some regression there, but where he's regressing to is still pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. I think Paul Goldschmidt's going to have a great season this year. I think he could get himself back into the NL MVP race. I'm going to leave him just off it right now. Honorable mention, if you will. We'll have to get at that. We're going to have a prediction award show or something like that once we get closer to opening day. Predict our World Series, maybe a couple MVPs, talks, Rookie of the Years. We'll have some fun on that episode. All right, sitting at number 6, we didn't go too far. We stayed in the Central. Hell, we even stayed on the same team. That goes to Nolan Arenado. He sits in the number 6 spot here. Going back to the Manny Machado talk, I said Manny Machado is the second best third baseman in all of baseball. Nolan Arenado is the best third baseman in all of baseball, especially when it comes to defense. Now, you could make the same argument that his offense might regress a little bit, just like Paul Goldschmidt. You could make that happen because he had such a great season last year. I'm not going to go and do that, though. I think Nolan Arenado is going to have a great year, and I think he is in the race for the NL MVP. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I've agreed with you up until now, this whole episode. I think we're forgetting about Key Brian Hayes in Pittsburgh as far as defensive third baseman goes. However, Nolan Arenado, he's pretty up there. I mean, it's hard to do any better than Nolan Arenado, and the fact that what he can contribute on both sides of the ball, I think is massive. Will he be MVP? Who knows? But does he have a shot? Every single year. And that's why he's up here on this list for me. Because the one thing was, can he do it outside of Colorado? And
Right.
I think that talk has gone exactly where it belongs, away. And so every year, his name has to be in the MVP conversation.
Do you think Dick Manfort still thinks Arenado's on his team, since he's wondering if he can has his team play 500 baseball? I'm just curious. I'm just wondering if that's the case. Because I'm
Must be.
really curious. Maybe Trevor Story. I'm not sure. But yeah, Nolan Arenado is going to have a great season. Let's mark that one down now. Let's book it. Number 5. This is going to be an interesting name. I don't think you guys are ready for this at number 5. But before I say this, remember, we're talking about just positional players. Shohei Ohtani sits at number 5 for us. Yes, we don't add his pitching woes or his pitching successes, I should say, not woes, into this list. This is just for his hitting tool only and his positional play. So that's why he sits at number 5. A little bit of spoiler alert for next episode when we talk about the pitchers. He's on that list too. So he'll be the only guy that makes both lists. But we got Shohei Ohtani sitting at number 5 for positional players. I mean, what an absolute talent this guy is. We are seeing, history in the making every time he's up to bat. He's one of the most fun players to watch in all of baseball. I know you got numbers in front of you. What's your thoughts on Shohei Ohtani sitting in the middle of this list at number 5?
Yeah, and I think, in all honesty, when I start looking at it, I'm actually wondering if, even though we kind of separate the fact that he pitches and he hits, I can't help but wonder if we're kind of just so in awe of the fact that this guy can do what he does at the level at which he does it. Because when you're looking at his numbers, they're great. I'm not going to sit here and dump on his numbers, but they're right in line with everybody else on this list. He's not a standout as far as his offensive production goes. Is he a standout on the Angels team? Absolutely. He and Mike Trout are carrying that team. And so I'm not trying to take anything away from Shohei Ohtani, and I hope that doesn't come across. But projected at around 35 home runs again, consistently hitting home runs, getting on base, weighted runs created plus. Some projections, I'm looking at them, most of them have him actually with a higher weighted runs created plus next year than he had this year. So I'm wondering if they kind of think like his 2022 was a bit of a down year, but after hitting 46 home runs the year before, maybe that's where they're coming from. He's still a special talent, and he's still going to be a very, very important part of this Angels team moving forward. Can he repeat? I think he has a very similar season this year that he did last year.
With Art Moreno saying that he's not selling the team anymore, he came out saying about the future of Shohei Ohtani, saying he wants to keep him long term. I think Shohei Ohtani is going to just go absolutely nuts this season. I think that when you talk about who can be in the race for MVP, I think you have to add his name by default every single year, not just because of his positional play, but because of his two-way player, ability, absolute just success, how he does it just so well on both sides, just like you mentioned. But yeah, I do think Shohei Ohtani is going to have a better year offensively. Not saying he had a bad one last year, but I do think he succeeds a little more. I think that offense on the Angels has improved drastically. And I don't think you can get any worse from Anthony Rendon. I think you're going to have to get some improvements from him. That's also going to help out here. And obviously, there's a guy that we haven't talked about yet who's also on this squad named Mike Trout. Let's go to number 4. And I think number 4 is also an interesting one here. I think a lot of people might be surprised that he is already this high on the list. But you and I we should probably start in this. You and I were consensus. When we put our list out, we had 1, 2, 3, and 4 exactly the same. 5 through 10 is where it got muddy for us, but 1 through 4 was exactly the same. So I think we can both be able to fight this one with a toothpick and a flashlight if need be. However, let's go and talk about number 4, and that's Julio Rodriguez, sitting in the number 4 spot. What a season he had last year. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. He is a special talent. I think he is the biggest star of the next generation of prospects of talent that's coming up here. And I don't think that's going to slow down. I think he is just a very fun talent. And I'm excited because I'm moving in the Seattle area. I'm going to be able to see him firsthand. So this is not a bias of saying that he's going to be, or I'm going to be in the Seattle area and get to watch him. Julio Rodriguez deserves this number 4 spot. What's your thoughts on him at number 4?
Griffey 2.0. I think that's the first thing that comes to my head. And that guy, Ken Griffey Jr., captivated me from a very young age. And Julio Rodriguez is doing the same thing. 22 years old, has such a bright future ahead of him. We saw him at the All-Star game, the home run derby. Like this kid is really kind of announced his presence on a Mariners team that could actually be very exciting to watch. They've, finally the turnstiles of spinning trades, and I think they found a combination that could do some serious damage. And Julio Rodriguez will be the centerpiece of it, playing center field, but also being the centerpiece of that squad.
I don't know if I'm ready to give props to Jerry DiPoto yet, though. So hang on a second, slow down. No, regardless, I do think Julio Rodriguez is going to be fun. I think the Seattle Mariners team is going to be fun. We obviously have to put this thought out there, though, because we've seen this from studs who take off their rookie year. Will we see some sort of a sophomore slump from Julio Rodriguez? Obviously, we don't think so. We still have it number 4. So why don't you think that happens?
Why don't we think that happens? I think he's just too good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's everything from his swing, everything. It's so repeatable, and I don't see it slumping. And the fact that he can also he combines the power with the contact, I think, is something that gives me at least confidence in saying, he could put up the same season he had last year, or even better.
AL Rookie of the Year last year. Will Julio Rodriguez be in the AL MVP talk come at the end of 2023?
He should have been already. He should have been this past season. That's my opinion. So I absolutely, if he can do what he did this season, maybe even be a little bit better, absolutely, he should be there, especially if the Mariners kind of make a little bit more noise in their division, as opposed to kind of sneaking into the wild card spot. If they can have a little bit more success in the win-loss column, I think he has to be.
AL West is going to be exactly that, the wild, wild West. It's going to be such a fun division to watch, with the Mariners rising, the Rangers spending every single dollar in the heart of Texas, and then obviously the Houston Astros just being what they are. That division is going to be really fun. Well, nice segue here. Speaking of, will we see someone in the AL MVP race? Let's talk about the AL MVP of last season. That's we have at number 3. That's Aaron Judge. Wow, we only have the guy who hit 62 home runs in the AL MVP in number 3. Yes, we do. However, yes, he is a fantastic player. I think that he could well deserve maybe one of these other spots. You'd have to debate this really hard for me to change my mind. However, Aaron Judge at number 3, I don't see him hitting 62 home runs next year, but I think that's a very fair assessment, right? But we could see him, I think, being very easily a 40 home run guy as long as he's healthy, and that's still a fantastic season. I will go out and say I'm sure we will see and hear, as long as he's healthy, him being in the AL MVP race once again this season, Sean.
Absolutely. And as much as it kills me, as much as I would have enjoyed Aaron Judge playing in San Francisco or anywhere else, I'm actually kind of glad that he's back in New York, right? Because I think that's, you want to beat the best, and Aaron Judge is absolutely one of the best. Listen to this. Go to his StatCast page. Average exit velocity, 100th percentile. Maximum exit velocity, 99th percentile. Hard hit rate, 100th percentile. It's like it just goes on and on. Barrel rate 100th percentile, expected slugging rate 100th percentile, walk rate 99th percentile. Like, this guy is legitimately probably one of the most feared hitters in all of baseball, because when he hits the ball, he does not miss it.
Right, that's true. And we've seen earlier in his career, he had some issues with the strikeouts that has drastically improved. And now, when he's just like you said, when he hits it, it goes out. I had the opportunity to see 2 of his home runs last year at Camden Yards when I went and watched the Orioles-Yankees series. One went to the section just to the left of me, and I'm one of those people that usually like to give a home run or a foul ball to a little kid if that happens. But I will say, if I would have caught an Aaron Judge home run, I probably would have kept that one. Just saying. Just going to keep that one out there. I think Aaron Judge is a great talent. I'm looking forward, and I'm with you. I would have loved to see him on the West Coast. I thought it just would have been cool to see the Giant play for the Giants, but we're going to see him in pinstripes. He gets the captain this season, but he doesn't get our number 1 spot. We sit him at number 3. All right, that's and right. The number 2 spot, this is a player that usually is a consensus number 1 for most lists. However, we have him at number 2. That is Mike Trout. Mike Trout is a generational talent. There's no doubt about it. You could make the argument that he could be when healthy or if healthy for all his years, he could be the greatest of all time. I mean, I've heard that conversation. I've heard that debate a few times. However, we got him sit at number 2. I'm going to say that's a little bit because of injury. I don't want to fully talk about that. I don't think that's the absolute reason why we have him at number 2, but I think that's a strong case. But even when he played in his 116 games last year, I think it was, he was still absolutely incredible. I'm sure you have the WRC plus in front of you in the season last year. Still, what he did in just that short amount of games last year was outstanding. If he can play a full season, we're going to see him rev up and get ready to go in the World Baseball Classic this year, playing for Team USA. If he can play a full season around that better offense of Anaheim with a stout and ready to go Shohei Ohtani, with a Hunter Renfroe, with hopefully an Anthony Rendon that fires up and keeps going, Mike Trout, I think, can get back to being the guy that we know can be the best player in baseball, not just the American League, but in baseball, period.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, it would be nice if he could actually see a playoff game. That right. That would be kind of cool.
I am not an Angels fan whatsoever, but that is something that I strive to talk about every offseason. Man, would I love to see the Angels make the playoffs.
Yeah. And only because of Mike Trout. The Angels don't deserve to make the playoffs. not the way they're constructed, but especially not with the owner they have. But just for Mike Trout, won't somebody please think of Mike Trout? But getting back to him specifically, last season, so I'm going to throw out 2020, throw that out for everybody. In fact, I'm sure the entire world wishes we could just forget about 2020.
Absolutely.
I'm also going to get rid of last season because he only played in 36 games. So taking out those 2 seasons, since 2012, last year was his worst season, and he put up 6 wins above replacement, 40 home runs, weighted runs created plus of 176, and that was arguably his worst season. I mean, I feel like there's nothing more anybody can say about Mike Trout and how good he is. And he's expected to do the same next year, and so not only this is why Mike Trout stands out, right? It's not just because he's capable and has all the talent in the world, but he does it every single year. Quietly does his own thing, destroying baseballs, destroying pitchers' careers. So I expect more of the same from him next year.
If he is completely healthy this year, when we go back to this list next year, you could probably already make that prediction that we're probably going to sit him at the number 1 spot. What do you think?
It depends on how this year's number 1 spot placeholder does, in all honesty.
Yeah, very true. Let's talk about that spot. Number 1 sitting here. Real quick, let's round out our final top 10. At number 10, we had Jose Ramirez. Number 9, Mookie Betts. Number 8, Manny Machado. 7, Paul Goldschmidt. 6, Nolan Arenado. Number 5, Shohei Ohtani, the positional player. And number 4, Julio Rodriguez. Number 3, Aaron Judge. And number 2, Mike Trout, sitting in the number 1 spot in the first annual OBP top 10 positional players. That's Juan Soto, baby. Juan Soto, San Diego Padres now, going into his first full season in San Diego. I mean, how can you not love this spot for Juan Soto? What this offense has, you're going to have to pitch to him every night. I mean, it's the West Coast Murderers Row. And even if he was the only player still on that Washington Nationals squad, I'd still think I'd put him in this number 1 spot. What a talent this guy is. I mean, even when he plays good defense in the corner outfield, but his offensive production is just absolutely insane and deserves this number 1 spot. And I think he's going to be your NL MVP this season with all the talent that surrounds him in San Diego. I mean, I just can't help but just know he's just going to have such a great year, John. Such a great year.
Yeah, no, and I think I've said that on this show already that that's his award to lose. He's going to just go off in San Diego, and you could look at his season last year, and he's only hit 27 home runs, and his weighted runs created plus was only 145, and he only put up 3.8 wins above. Stop it.
I mean, getting traded
may have struggled
sucks too, though. Getting traded sucks. Let's keep that in mind too.
Absolutely. And you're going from literally one side of the country to the other. Like, we just went coast to coast. Juan Soto went coast to coast, and he moved coast to coast. And I think
he went from the basement to the attic too. He went from the worst team in baseball to arguably one of the best teams too. So
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, all of that included, I'm not overly concerned about whether or not he struggled in San Diego so far, because as you said, he is not going to struggle this coming season in that lineup. Projected at 113 RBI, I bet you, or sorry, excuse me. I was looking at runs scored. That's going up too, by the way. But RBI is around 90, 95. He's hitting 100 easily. 30 home runs ish, 35, book it. Weighted runs created plus 160 to 170. I think 170, 175. I just feel like he's going off this year in San Diego, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, I mean, Juan Soto to me is going to be your NL MVP, but we'll give you our actual true lock-in predictions on another show. But this was fun. Next week we're going to go and do top 10 pitchers for our first ever OBP top 10 pitchers, and we already gave you a hint. Shohei Ohtani is on that list. Don't you worry. But he's well. Is he number one? Well, we'll see on this episode. Sean, this was fantastic. Thanks for joining in with me on this another fun podcast of the OK Baseball podcast, where I think our list was a little bit more than okay. I really do. I think it was quite good today. And I'm interested to see what happens next week when we get the pitchers. We'll continue with another week of Coast to Coast. We'll have a lot more to talk about as next time we meet next Wednesday. We will already have pitchers and catchers report. We're sure we'll have some more news to discuss and talk about. And we're going to have you all covered here on our flagship show every Wednesday night. Once pitchers and catchers report, you're going to see a lot more action on the OK Baseball podcast feed. You're going to start seeing a lot more, not just on Wednesday nights or Thursday mornings on YouTube. You're going to see a lot of more of our pretty faces and maybe a few other guests hopping on the OBP show feed. So be sure to tune in there. Sean, where can they find you in all your work as we get ready to head off another great episode of OBP?
Absolutely. Head over to jaysfromthecouch.com. All of our Blue Jays coverage there, our YouTube channel, Jays from the Couch. So give us a subscribe there. We've got our podcast coming Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern time once spring training starts. So next week, we're switching to our weekly schedule. Nice. And we've also got the On-Fact Circle and the Sunny Side of the Dome shows on YouTube as well. Lots of great YouTube content. And, of course, all of our written content at jaysfromthecouch.com.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. We will see you back here Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Eastern, for another episode of the OK Baseball podcast, where we will be in spring training the next time we meet. Take care, everyone.